This weather keeps getting more intense as we remain unsettled for the next 3 days. If we take a look at the big picture this morning on the satellite view, we're coming off a very active afternoon and evening yesterday that started in South Dakota with some tornadoes, went down to Nebraska through Kansas. We had a couple strong tornadoes last night in Oklahoma, even one reported in Missouri. We actually had another one reported in Tennessee. And so far, we've got up to 17 tornado reports from the National Weather Service. There's the convective complex that went through the overnight hours. Now it's highlighted across areas of Tennessee, back into Kentucky, as well as into Illinois and Indiana this morning with some morning rain showers. That should move out, but we have a much stronger disturbance out ahead of a cold front today that's going to kick off a more intense round of severe storms. You can see the active subtropical jet is still alive and well off into the deep south. That's feeding in all the Gulf moisture that is the culprit of fueling these severe storms. And then further south, we actually have a convective complex that's kind of blowing up this morning across Panama City. And believe it or not, we're only a couple weeks away from hurricane season. So we're going to start to look at every single storm. And in fact, right now, some of the ensemble guidances have about a 20% probability of this actually trying to become a depression before it actually crosses over Central America and goes into the Pacific. So we'll be starting to watch out there in the tropics as we get deeper into May, because yes, June 1st is the official kickoff for hurricane season. But if we take a look at the big picture, you can see the warmer anomalies pulling in off those southwest winds. So plenty of warm conditions fueling the fire. And then we've got that colder pocket coming in from the northwest. You can actually see where the cold front lies this afternoon. It's right across this boundary. And that is going to be the culprit, one of the trigger mechanisms, along with the low-level jet, that's going to kick off another round of severe storms across the Ohio Valley, likely starting around 4 or 5 o'clock going into the evening time frame today. We take a look at another culprit of how this is going to be creating the lift. Is we've got this pretty good vorticity coming in from the northwest. We've got that colder pocket aloft that's going to insinuate some larger hailstones with this activity. And we've got, unfortunately, the low-level jet again, and that is going to tie ahead of the cold front within the warm sector there in the Ohio Valley for a severe weather event heading into this afternoon, likely extending into the evening time frame. So right now, we do have that upgraded enhanced risk across Indiana, into Ohio, back into Kentucky. We do have a slight risk that fishtails all the way further south into Illinois, back into areas of Missouri, even into portions of Tennessee. This is the most favored area out ahead of that little cool front that's going to be draped across this region. I think things get going around 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. If we can zoom in to the tornado parameters, unfortunately, that low-level jet is going to be pretty strong, and that is going to be the culprit to produce the areas of rotation within these supercells. And if you live in the Indianapolis region, back into Columbus, down into Cincinnati, as well as into Louisville, even in 4 areas into Paducah, St. Louis, back into Jackson, into Charleston, up here to Cleveland, even into Detroit, into Chicago. This is your more favored areas where the atmosphere will be rotating that could see a tornado. And yes, within that yellow shaded area, you have a higher probability of seeing a strong tornado, the EF2 type caliber, likely from that 5 o'clock through into that 10 o'clock time frame. There seems to be a 5 to 6 hour window there where it could be pretty bumpy up there. So definitely be on high alert and stay well aware of the head of the storm and listen to all warnings out there. And look at the convective complex as we blow up. So you get to see the cold front. You've got the low pressure center that's highlighted across the Dakotas. And then there's the cooler air boundary draped across Missouri. And then right there in the warm sector in eastern portions of Illinois and mainly into Tennessee, Kentucky, back into areas of Indiana, into Ohio, back into West Virginia. That is going to be your favorite area to seeing all 3 modes of severe storms this afternoon. So if we take a look at the overall tornado parameters, this is a little concerning, not nearly as high as what we saw yesterday, but these are definitely significant levels. In fact, even above what the chart actually goes to in western Tennessee, western Kentucky, southern areas of Illinois, back into central and southern Indiana, as well as into eastern, western portions of Ohio. That seems to be the favorite area. If you're going to be seeing a stronger tornado this afternoon, right there in that region would be the most susceptible, where the atmosphere will be rotating and has the greatest lift in between that time frame. So definitely be on high alert. But as we head into tomorrow, yeah, that warm southwest wind is going to be alive and well. Look at all the heat coming in from Mexico, deep south of Texas. That's not a misprint, folks. That's 109 degrees. Yeah, 104 back into the 90s. They're 92 in Dallas. Even Florida will get into the 90s, up here into Georgia, into the Carolinas. So you got plenty of heat. And this is going to into your first end week of May. And so, yeah, with those southwest winds, before that cooler air comes in from the northwest, you're going to have what they call compressional heating. And yes, the atmosphere is going to heat up in a big way. But that's also going to be the culprit that's going to fuel these thunderstorms out ahead of that cold front. So even as we head into Wednesday, that could even be a little bit more significant threat highlighted across this region. There's the secondary cool front that will be finally on the move. And you can see as we heat it up in the heat of the day, likely 5-6 o'clock time frame, yes, we have a convective complex that will be blowing up across this atmosphere through Indiana into Ohio, back into Kentucky, and then going down into southern portions of Illinois, southeastern portions of Missouri, back into Arkansas, and then the tail end of it would feed into far northeast Texas. And that's exactly where the Storm Prediction Center has that elevated, enhanced risk for areas of southern Indiana, Illinois, as well as at Kentucky, back into Tennessee, as getting into Missouri, back into areas of Arkansas, and then those far northeastern portions of North Texas. And again, we have yet another hatched risk, or this is 3 days in a row, folks, of hatched risk and potentially strong tornadoes. And yes, I do feel this could actually be even probably upgraded to a moderate risk within this yellow shaded area, back into Springfield, into St. Louis, into Paducah, back into Nashville, up here into portions of Jackson, into Louisville. You have the highest probability, a little bit lighter amounts, because we will have that cold front. You can never roll out an isolated spin-up tornado along that cool front, but the greatest lift will be further north. And I do feel there will be a pocket within this zone that will likely be upgraded to a moderate risk as we get closer to that event. But overall, as we head into that Wednesday timeframe, I think this is kind of the latest high resolution guidance, and looking at, again, that peak heating of the day, 4, 5, 6 o'clock. So we're going to have that convective complex blowout out ahead of the cold front within the warm sector across Indiana, back here through Kentucky, and this is going to continue building. And then we'll have another convection that will likely blow up along the cool front across Missouri, back through northwestern portions of Arkansas, feeding into the extreme areas of northeast Texas. And that will continue to dive southeast as we head into the overnight hours, producing its own severe threat with all three modes. And it doesn't really end there, folks, is even as we head into your Thursday. So we've got today, we've got Wednesday, and even Thursday. Yeah, that's basically not a good sign. We've got all the heat building in from the south, right? We've got heat building in from the northwest. But what happens in the middle? We've got all the cooler air in the middle, and obviously you're going to have a battle zone out ahead of that cooler air mass and the trigger mechanism. So unfortunately, we'll have yet another round of severe storms as we head into Thursday, but it's not before all the heat really kicks in. In fact, we could have up to 15 potentially record high temperatures, as we've got triple digits all the way into the deep south of Texas, widespread 90s across the southern flank. As if you live along the I-10, I-20, corridor, you're going to be looking at those 90-degree temperatures across that region. But all these records are going to be breaking big time with low and mid 90s for areas into central Florida here. But look at the heat building further north into South Carolina, into as well as into Georgia. Even the 90s feed into areas of back into North Carolina as well, ahead of that cold front. So you're going to have a lot of instability in the atmosphere. And yes, even right now, we do have that slight risk for severe storms that's draped across Delaware, through Virginia, back into the Carolinas, through Georgia, as well as into the Florida Panhandle, into that I-20, I-10 region, and then going into Louisiana and likely south of DFW into central Texas, out ahead of that cool air tapping into that warm sector further south. Could have some damaging winds aspect to it and some larger hail associated with it. Not probably very large hail, but some potentially larger hail. And yes, you can't rule out an isolated spin up tornado or two along that leading edge of that boundary. And there's the convective complex with the lightning display likely again blowing up kind of into the heat of the afternoon, draped across that region. But by the time we head into Friday, I think things start to settle down. The cool front will really overcome a good part of the country. The only game in town is going to be right across the far east, the interior portions of the coastline. But besides that, we're going to have some much clearer skies behind the cool front, and a lot drier air. So you can actually see this coming in from the northwest. You got the northwest flow winds that's dragging in the cooler anomalies coming down from Canada, and much drier conditions as all the wetter atmosphere is going to be moving out into the Atlantic as well. So we've got a couple days to enjoy some really nice conditions on the backside that will likely start on Friday, and everybody's going to be taking advantage of this little cool down. It's not much, but it's certainly not going to be the 90s and the triple digits and everything else that we're going to see in the muggy warm sector in between. This cooler air is going to be wiping out any possibilities of severe storms. So we're going to be taking a much needed break after we have another 3 rounds of severe storms for the next 3 days. But there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel with a much welcome relief coming in on Friday. And I think it only amplifies. This is Saturday morning for your weekend ahead. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update, why I protect you before and after storm.